Coming to you live from the second floor of the Duncan Student Center, welcome to Inside the Irish. Today, we are shorthanded here at NDTV, but we still have a lot to talk about. We've got basketball, we've got soccer, we've got hockey, and we've got volleyball. Inside the Irish starts now.
Of Notre Dame, and thank you for watching Shamrock Sports.
On 3rd and 8, drops back, the Irish bring 5. Thrown to the left, intercepted. Kyle Hamilton will go. Touchdown, Notre Dame. 1st and 10 from their own 42. They give to around the right side on the reverse. Running free. The 10, the 5. Touchdown, Notre Dame. Touchdown, Notre Dame. This is going to be a touchdown. Touchdown, Chris Finch. Touchdown, Notre Dame.
Welcome back to the second floor of the Duncan Student Center. Chris Frick alongside Finley Corrigan. Finley, NDTV, we're under quarantine today. A lot of sickness, that's why it's only 2 of us, but we've still got a lot to talk about today.
Yes,
and we'll start off with men's basketball. Notre Dame's men's basketball team last night against Howard pulled out a 79-50 win. 4 players in double figures for the Irish: Mooney, Goodwin, Durham, and Fluger. What are you liking that you're seeing from this team so far? 2-1, they're looking pretty good.
Yeah, so I've been pretty impressed with our game so far. I mean, we haven't played super great teams except for UNC, but we were able to hang with them, which was super nice. And against Howard, I think we played a really strong game. Austin Mooney, he had a double-double, 18 points, 16 rebounds, both of which were a season high for him. So, yeah.
Yeah, they've looked really good so far. I really like what I'm seeing out of certain sophomores that we'll talk about soon, but I think a lot of players are getting better so far this year, and I think it's important for them to improve from what they did last season. However, against UNC, the one team that they've played that's been good so far, other than that, they've played Howard and Robert Morris, and they played Marshall tonight. I worry that I saw a lot of in UNC what I saw last year, where they would play close against ACC teams, and then towards the end, they didn't have someone to make those big shots down the stretch, and it would fall away, and they'd lose by 10 points or so,
right.
Which is something that worries me. But I think with the new experience, more players having more experience on this team, I think that's really important for them. And one of those players that has played really well for them is the sophomore Prentice Hub. And Finley, I want to give you credit because a couple weeks ago on this exact show, we talked about players that we thought were going to step up this season, and you highlighted Prentice Hub. What did you see? What have you seen so far that you've liked from him?
So I was super impressed with his game against UNC. It was definitely one of his best games in his career. He had 22 points, and he went 8 for 17 on shots, so that was super impressive. And he really kept us in the game that game. So I'm super impressed with him, and I'm hoping that he keeps this up. Although he didn't have a great game against Howard the other day, I think that he'll continue to play strong throughout the season.
Yeah. Well, Finley, my new $1 million idea is, since Prentice, he's shooting 50% from before last night's game, or before 2 nights ago's game, he was shooting 50% from the field, 50% from 3. He's been money this season. He's been money, 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 money. The new TV show coming to all networks near you is The Prentice.
I like it.
Starring Prentice Hub. It will be only highlights of Prentice Hub shooting, and all his highlights from games. He had some great highlights against Robert Morris and Howard. So I think that's my $1 billion idea. I'm really relying on that. If that goes south, then my entire life goes south.
I like it.
The Prentice coming to a network near you. Yeah, Prentice Hub has played fantastic so far. He's really stepped up this year. He's shooting a lot better. Shooting so well that I'm worried he's going to regress a little bit because I don't think he can keep up what he's been doing so far.
I agree.
Shooting 50% from the field so far. But he's a guy who's going to control pace a lot on the offense, and I like that the person on this team who is controlling a lot of pace of play is playing as well as he is. And he's proven the ability. Last season, he could create his own shot, but he couldn't really make his own shot. This year, he's shown the ability to create his own shot and make some tough shots, especially in the paint. He's done a really good job there, and obviously, he's shooting a lot better. I really like what I'm seeing from him.
Me too.
I think the big question is, though, two games that we played so far, Robert Morris and Howard, they're not very good teams.
Right.
Are these worth getting excited over?
I mean, every win obviously is worth celebrating, but I don't think these are really worth celebrating too much, being that they're games that we should win, you know? Had we have beaten UNC, however, that would have been a game to celebrate. So these wins, we just have to take them and focus on the bigger games, basically.
Yeah, I think it's a good indication of what we might see. I think they've been forming good habits in these games, and I think that's what you want to see. The big thing for me is the shooting. I think we haven't seen them shooting as well as they could be. Other than Prentice Hub, I think a lot of other players have struggled from the field thus far, and I think that's one thing that we really got to watch out for. So in terms of who needs to play better, some of those guys, who do you look towards who needs to play a little bit better on this team in order for them to improve once they get into the meat of their schedule, per se?
So I'm looking at senior forward Juwan Durham. He played a very strong game the other day against Howard. 11 points, which is his first time in double digits this season. And defensively, I think he's a really dominant figure. You know, being that he is so tall and everything, he's able to block some shots, which is super nice. And I'm looking for him to make more shots rather than just be a defensive player.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good choice. I think I look to a guy like Nate Laszewski. Nate Laszewski, because I think the players that are going to make the difference for this team are this sophomore class, the big sophomore class that they have on this team right now.
For sure.
I think Laszewski, you know, he was a guy who was recruited to make shots, and so far he's 2 of 11 from 3 this season. I think he needs to be making more shots. I think once he starts to improve his play, I think because he's only averaging about 6 points a game right now.
Right.
I think if he plays better, this team is going to be really tough to guard because you got Prentice Hub, who's going to be creating shots for other people. If Prentice Hub can drive in and he has guys to kick it out to, who he's confident, who can make shots, that's going to be big for this team. Mm-hmm. And I think Nate Laszewski's he's probably the most likely guy that Prentice Hub's going to be able to kick it out to. You know, obviously Gibbs too. Gibbs has looked really good so far, and he's another guy who can create his own shot. But guys like Gibbs, guys like Dane Goodwin, Nate Laszewski, those guys are important for that they're on the wings and that they're making their shots when they're presented to them. And in that game against UNC, there were a lot of times when guys were missing big shots, you know?
Yeah.
Where moments where we were up 2 and we could have been up 5, and that's a big difference. But instead, we would be missing those shots, and Cole Anthony would come back down the floor and shoot it right in our faces. It was rough. But yeah, I think that's going to be important for them, that they can make those threes. And then we look towards Marshall, their next game. Notre Dame plays in Marshall this weekend. Mm-hmm. Does Notre Dame get it done at home against this thundering herd of Marshall?
100%. Marshall is 1-1 on the season right now, but they actually only beat Robert Morris by 7 points, whereas we dominated them and won by 35 points. So I'm looking that this will be a pretty easy win for the Irish, especially if we play as good as we have been in the past few games.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this is going to be that tough of a game for the Irish. I think it's more about what we talked about, building those good habits, starting to formulate those, who needs to step up and who needs to play well once we do get to those tough games. But yeah, I think we'll get a win against Marshall tonight. I think it should be a good game for Notre Dame. 7 p.m. See how it goes.
Be there.
So now we move on to the other side, women's basketball. Women's basketball, they've struggled more than we're used to start the season. They lost 63 to 74 earlier this week against Tennessee, and then last night against Michigan State, a 69 to 72 loss in which they went down 18-4 early in the game. So Finley, do you think what we've seen so far? You know, we're so used to a model of success and championship level play from this Notre Dame women's basketball team. Do you think that what we're seeing so far is growing pains as this team hasn't really played together that much yet? It's a lot of new faces. Is this growing pains from a team that's developing their chemistry and learning to get better together, or is this a sign of what this season is going to be, more of a rebuilding season for the Irish?
I think it's kind of both. You know, we have some really good freshmen, but they just haven't played together as much. So they have to learn how to develop that chemistry. And being that it is still early in the season, I'm expecting the chemistry to be there at some point. But also, it's definitely going to be a rebuilding year, being that last year we were so successful. I'm thinking that this year probably won't be as good, but I think the chemistry will definitely come at some point.
Yeah, I think it does come a lot of this is the lack of experience that this team has playing together. You know, highest scorer from last year's team, who was on the roster last year, is Caitlin Gilbert, who averaged 3.6 points per game last season. We'll talk more about her. She's really stepped up this season. If you look at this team, you know, Abby Prohaska, Michaela Vaughn, both injured right now.
Yep.
Those are two people who got some playing time last year who aren't on this team now. So I think you look to that in terms of this team's lack of experience playing with each other. Not a lot of players who got playing time for Notre Dame last season. And then I think you do also look to maybe the lack of developed talent. There's a lot of talent on this roster, but the lack of players who have experience. So the best player on this team talent-wise is probably Sam Brunell, but
Yes.
she hasn't had this the experience in college yet to really play at the highest level. And I think you look at that in terms of Notre Dame's stats so far. They're shooting 21% from three before last night's game against Michigan State, 66% from the line. And then I think also the other thing is last season Muffet McGraw could get away with playing 7 or 8 players for the whole game because she had that powerful starting 5 who could go the full 40 minutes and really carry this team to victory. You don't really have that this year. You don't have players who are used to this big sum of playing time, so you kind of got to go to your reserves. And I think that's something that Notre Dame needs to find in terms of how they manage this depth and who needs to step up when. But there has been good stuff for Notre Dame so far.
For sure.
Who's a player that you've liked so far from Notre Dame?
So I really like Caitlin Gilbert, and as you said, she was only averaging 3 points a game last year, but this year she's actually the leading scorer overall on the season, which is super impressive. And defensively, she's proven herself as well, which is nice to see. She had a really strong game against Michigan State last night. She had 19 points along with Sam Brunell, and they were tied for the highest points. So I'm super impressed with her, and I'm hoping that she can keep this up.
Yeah, I like how Gilbert's been playing a lot. I think her running the point, she's done a really good job. Another person I look to is Destiny Walker, the grad transfer from North Carolina. I think she's played really well, and I think this is a very young Notre Dame team.
Yes.
And I think that when you have a player like Walker, who's had 4 years of experience at North Carolina, she brings a lot of leadership to this team, and I think that's really important. 15.7 points per game before last night. Last night she only had 4 points. So I think it's going to be really important for her to keep up this level of play and be a leader for this Notre Dame team that's learning to play together. And Muffet McGraw has clearly looked to her. She's been on the floor a lot. She's played well in her time. So I think Destiny Walker is someone who I've been really impressed with so far. We'll see how this Notre Dame team progresses. I think they'll be able to improve a little bit as the season goes on. It's still early, so we'll see what's to come. And looking towards the other side of the spectrum, we move from the court to the ice.
Yep.
Notre Dame hockey has played fantastic so far. And for more on that, we send it down to Jackson Hammond.
Thanks, guys. I'm Jackson Hammond here with an overview of the Notre Dame men's hockey team. There's certainly a lot of optimism about this group of players as the team has jumped out to a quick 7-0-1 start. To begin the season, Notre Dame notched 2 series wins at home against Air Force and Lake Superior State. In the series against the Air Force Falcons, forward Mike O'Leary impressed to the tune of 5 assists. Forwards Cam Morrison, Cal Burke, and Colin Tyson racked up 2 goals apiece in the series. These 4 players shined yet again in the 2 games against Lake Superior State. Following these 2 tune-up series, Notre Dame traveled to Minneapolis for its first Big Ten test of the season against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. In the first game, O'Leary gave the Irish an early first-period lead with his 5th goal of the season. Goaltender Cale Morris had a busy second period, racking up 8 saves. The Golden Gophers tied the game up near the end of the 3rd period, kicking off a 43-second span in which 3 goals were scored, pushing the game to 2-2 and in overtime, where neither team was able to score, resulting in a tie. The Irish were able to get the better of Minnesota the following day with a 5-3 victory. Sophomore Charlie Wraith hit what proved to be the game-winning goal in what was also his first career goal for the Irish.
Morrison to the blue line to Hellickson. A shot and a goal! The Fighting Irish take a lead.
The following weekend, Notre Dame returned to South Bend for 2 games against the Ohio State Buckeyes. The Irish won the first game in OT, with Pierce Crawford netting the overtime winner with just over a minute left in the extra period. The Irish got another victory against the 11th-ranked Buckeyes the following day by the score of 2-1. Notre Dame's 7-0-1 start has helped to propel them to the number 4 overall spot in the national rankings, behind only Minnesota State, Denver, and Cornell. The Irish hope to further their case for being one of the top teams in the nation over the next few weeks, with matchups upcoming against 15th-ranked Wisconsin, 17th-ranked Bowling Green, 16th-ranked Boston College, 8th-ranked Penn State, and 20th-ranked Western Michigan over the course of the next month and a half. This is certainly an imposing schedule, but if the Irish continue to play as they have been over the first month of the season, they will surely be competitive in all of these matchups. Back up to you guys in the set.
Shots. And being that Minnesota and Ohio State are super good teams, they're really good wins.
Yeah, I think you look at this Notre Dame team, and they have so many guys who can get the ball, the puck in the back of the net. Excuse me. 12 different goal scorers this season. And I think one of the things that's been really impressive is their defense, especially when they go on the power play kill. When they've been shorthanded this season, opponents have had 24 power plays against them. Only one goal allowed in those 24 power plays. So their power play kill has been really impressive so far. And I think there's a lot of good things to come from this Notre Dame hockey team.
I agree.
What do you think needs to improve, though? You know, this is a team that they're 7-0-1, but 4 of those games were against, I would say, lesser opponents. But the Ohio State and Minnesota wins are very impressive. But what needs to improve as this team moves on in the season?
I really think the chemistry, although it's there, I think it can become stronger. And, you know, we've seen that there's a lot of people on the team who can score, which is a great thing. But I do think that the chemistry overall, we need to work together a little better and take advantage of the power play when it's our puck, when we have the puck, you know, and just score off of those. So,
yeah, I agree. And I think you mentioned Cale Morris. I think he's playing well so far. I think he's looked good, not great. You know, we talked a couple weeks ago on the show about his stellar sophomore season, and I think if he's able to replicate that more, this Notre Dame team is going to be pretty unstoppable. I think he can play better. He's allowed just over 2 goals per game so far. I think if he can bring that number down a little bit, this Notre Dame team's played really well. And also, Notre Dame's first period play has not been the 3rd best in the country. So far this season, in the second and third periods, they're outscoring their opponents 27-9. Yes. First period being outscored 5-9. And I think in terms of a team's morale, you can't be playing from behind all the time. So I think it's going to be important for them to improve upon that and get off to these faster starts in games, especially once they start getting into the heart of their Big Ten schedule. I think it's going to be tough to play from behind all the time. So I think first period play needs to improve.
yeah, and you were talking about Cale Morris, and I want to focus on the Ohio State game on Saturday. You know, he stopped 24 of Ohio State's 25 shots, which is a save percentage of .93. So I was super impressed with him in that game. And also, as you were talking about coming from behind, we were down going into the third period, and we came out with a win in that game. So we've proven that we can come from behind, but it's never a great place to be in.
Yeah, I completely agree. Do you think it's national championship or bust for this team?
Yes,
Okay.
for sure. I'm super impressed with what I've seen. You know, 7-0-1 on the season so far, tied for number 3 in the country. That's super impressive. So I'm really looking for us to go far and hopefully win a national championship.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a disappointment if this team doesn't at least make it to the Frozen Four. And I think
For sure,
this
for
team's
sure.
going to be it's going to be this is one of the best teams that we've put out in years, and I think it's going to be big for them. Do they keep it going on the road against Wisconsin this weekend? 2 games up in Wisconsin. How do you think we come out of that?
I'm thinking it's going to be a split, just being that it's not a home game is always tough, and Wisconsin is a strong team. So either a split or we'll sweep them. I'm hoping that we'll sweep them, fingers crossed, but I'm not really sure. I'm thinking more of a split, but we'll see.
Okay, we will see. And we move from hockey into women's soccer. Women's soccer fell in the quarterfinals to number 3 North Carolina of the ACC tournament.
Yes.
But they got into the NCAA tournament. Didn't do that
great
last
thing.
year, so it's a step up. They drew St. Louis. First of all, how do you think a 3-0 loss to North Carolina affects them going into the NCAA tournament, if at all?
Right. I think a 3-0 loss is always difficult, but, you know, we've seen that UNC is a super strong team. So I'm hoping that that doesn't really change their mentality and they can really just focus on the NCAA tournament because that's what's important right now. You know, we have to move on from the ACC tournament and focus on the NCAAs.
Yeah, I agree. I think you look at UNC, they're ranked 3rd in the country. They're one of the best women's soccer team in the country. I think you can't put too much weight on that game, and I think your confidence can't waver too much if you're Notre Dame, if you're head coach Nate Norman. I think it's going to be important for them to have a short-term memory on that one and kind of leave it behind as they head into this game against St. Louis. So to talk more about St. Louis, the Atlantic 10 champions, 17-3-2 on the season, albeit against lesser opponents. They didn't play the tough ACC schedule that Notre Dame has played. But most importantly, Notre Dame and St. Louis started their season out against each other. Notre Dame came out of that one with a 1-0 victory. Notre Dame won that game on a penalty kick from Sammy Fisher.
No.
What do you look at going into this game against St. Louis? Who do you think steps up for Notre Dame, and do you think that we come out with a similar result as that first game of the season?
Yeah, so I'm looking for Sammy Fisher to really step up. You know, she was just named the All-ACC third team. She has 6 goals on the year and 16 points, which is very impressive. So I'm looking for her to score goals when we need her to. And you were talking about how we beat them earlier in the season 1-0, and after that we actually went on a 6-game winning streak, which I'm hoping, again, we can
to replicate that in the NCAA tournament.
Exactly. But, you know, St. Louis is a good team. They're on a 16-game unbeaten streak, so they're not looking to lose. So we really need to come out strong, and I think scoring as early as possible in the game would be something that would get us ahead.
Yeah, I think some breaking news from inside the Irish here. One thing to look for in this game is the fact that Maddie Interian is going to be starting in goal over Brooke Littman.
Yes.
Brooke Littman was the one who played in that first game. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. You know, Littman shut St. Louis out in that first game. It's Interian coming back from injury. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. And then I think someone else to look for, Kiki Van Zanten, the freshman.
For sure.
She's probably the fastest player on this team, and I think speed kills in college soccer. I think Notre Dame's going to want to get her the ball because she's someone who can make plays against the St. Louis team. The St. Louis team that's played really well defensively. So I think that's going to be very important for them. I think it'll be interesting to see what exactly happens there, and I think
I agree.
we'll see if we can come out with a win against St. Louis. So the final thing that we want to talk about here today is women's volleyball. Women's volleyball, we've had a lot of fun with women's volleyball on the show. You know, we were throwing confetti around earlier in the season. I think that it's going to be the thing that now is, though, that they're 17-7, tough 5-set loss against Miami. How do you look at this team's season overall?
I'm thinking overall at the beginning, you know, we came out super strong and we were all super impressed, but it's kind of been downhill and uphill. It's just been all over the place since then. So I'm looking for us to hopefully win a couple of our last 4 games. I'm hoping all 4, but we're playing some hard teams like Louisville, Duke, Syracuse, you know. But yeah, I'm hoping that we can finish the season strong.
Yeah, I think, you know, you look at this, I think this team's been worn down a little bit.
Yes, for sure.
They've played a lot of 4- and 5-set matches, but I think it's been a really impressive season from them. They have so many strong players on this team. Charlie Nigo, Sydney Bennett, we've talked about them a lot this season. So I think that, I think there's a lot to be proud of from this team. And I think as we head down to the stretch of the season, they have 4 games left: Syracuse, Louisville, Georgia Tech, and Duke. How do you think they perform in that game? Do you think, how many wins do we get down the stretch this season?
I'm thinking we'll win 3 of the 4. You know, we played Syracuse and Louisville earlier in the season, and we lost both of the matches. But Louisville, we only lost 2-3. So obviously we were able to stay with them. So I'm thinking we can beat them. And Syracuse will be a tougher game, being that we didn't play that good when we played them last time. But I think that one will definitely be the hardest out of the 4 games to come.
Okay, yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think I could see this team going, I think they go 2-2 at worst. I think 4-0 at best. It'll be fun to see. I just want to retract the statement from earlier about Maddie Interian starting in goal. We don't have that completely confirmed. So we'll see how that goes for the women's soccer team on Saturday. But Finley, we were shorthanded today.
We made it work.
We made it work.
We made it work, Chris.
I think it's been a fun show.
Yes.
There's a lot of good stuff going on with Notre Dame sports right now.
Yes, for sure, for sure.
We'll see how this weekend goes for the Irish. So for my partner Finley Corrigan, I'm Chris Frick. Thank you for tuning in to Inside the Irish.